Children, in the previous video, we were introduced to the author and the chapter. Now, moving on further. Now, the content of the chapter. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice tells you the story of British society in late 18th and early 19th century England. In this extract from the novel, you will get to know about the Bennet sisters and their parents. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet had 5 daughters: Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, and Lydia. The family lived in Longbourn House in the village of Longbourn in Hertfordshire. The little town of Meryton was a mile away. The Bennets, though not rich, were very comfortably off, but their easy circumstances would continue only as long as Mr. Bennet lived, because the Bennet property was entailed. The 5 girls could look forward to only about £1,000 each from their mother, who had had a certain amount of money settled on her by her father when she married. The fine house in which they lived and the farm which gave Mr. Bennet his income would both, on his death, pass on to Mr. Collins, a distant cousin but the nearest male relative. Now, children, word meanings. Entailed. Entailed means property which cannot be passed to other than a male relation. Therefore, it was passed to Mr. Collins. Next, distant. Distant means far. Now, children, moving on to the explanation part. This story is written by Jane Austen. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet had 5 daughters whose names were Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, and Lydia. They lived in the village of Longbourn in Hertfordshire. They were not so rich but comfortably off. Mr. Bennet's property was entailed, which means that the property and his income after his death would pass on to Mr. Collins, a distant cousin but the nearest male relative. Now, children, answer the following questions. Name all the 5 daughters of Mr. Bennet. Second question, where did they live? And third question, who was Mr. Collins?